So good to see so many of you here back in Vevey. I was thinking last night, I thought, gosh, I miss interacting with you all. Then I stopped myself, like, really? So, okay, maybe not all of you. Anyway, listen, no, it's Zone AOA, but obviously before I start, I want to take the opportunity. I do have some of my colleagues here from the markets and from the zone, so I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce them. I would not be standing here, much less standing here smiling, if not for my team. So I'll start with the three gentlemen coming from the markets. It's Koso, please stand up, from Japan. And so he'll be presenting in a little while. Then we have Danesh from Nigeria, Gana-san from Vietnam. And so you will be hearing from all three of them later today. Now, coming from my small but elite zone team, I start with Juan Arenals, who is our zone CFO. And just as a side note, he was one of the main architects behind Atlas Tool. We have Vinit, who is our head of supply chain. And we have then Victor, who is our lead, regional lead for ASEAN. And of course, last but not least, Claudia, who is our head of HR. So with that, let's start with Zone AOA. Zone AOA, you should know this, it's Asia, Oceania, and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's big, it's diverse, it's complex, but isn't it incredibly exciting? Home to the world's most populous country and home to the world's second largest economy. 8 of the top 10 fastest growing economies worldwide is in this region. Now, long-term trends are very positive for Nestlé. So let me just quickly go through each of them. Urbanization, this should be new news to you. 14 out of the 20 largest mega cities is in AOA. Tokyo, Jakarta, Delhi, Metro Manila, Seoul, the list goes on. And what's exciting is not only do we have the biggest chunk of the population and the share of growth, but also a lot of these markets are still in early stages of consumption curve. So you can see like India, Vietnam, Philippines, it's very much still on the flat end of the S curve. The other thing is AOA has become today the global center of gravity when it comes to digitalization. This year alone, 40% of B2C commerce will be done in Asia-Pac. By 2018, so this is not far away, like in 2 years, China e-com will be bigger than US and Europe combined. That's combined. So it's not just US, and that's in 2 years, in 2018. Now, the thing that's great about Nestlé is we have been present in so many of these countries for very, very long time. Philippines, 105 years. Singapore, Malaysia, 104. India, Japan, 103 years. South Africa celebrates 100 years this June, actually. I'll be there. And Nigeria, Danesh, if I'm not mistaken, is 55 years that Nestlé has been in Nigeria. And the level of trust that we enjoy in our markets is incredibly high. And even if you look at this chart, even in China, where we are not even there 30 years, look at the incredibly high rating of trust that we get for Nestlé. So for a company like ours, where quality and trust are paramount, this gives us a great foundation to build from. And so no surprise, our brands are part of consumers' lives every day. Very strong market position. Our share of wallet in the Philippines, for instance, is the highest in the group. And this is thanks to the many, many years of investments that we have made in many of these markets. So incredible positions that serve as a good foundation for us to build from. So Nestlé in AOA. Nestlé in AOA is 22 billion in sales. And excluding the globally managed businesses like waters, like professional and nutrition, we had sales of 14 billion in 2015. It's a balanced portfolio, as you can see, balanced in terms of categories as well as in terms of geography. And it's interesting to see, if you look, ASEAN now is same size as Greater China. So the thing that to note, per capita consumption in the Philippines and Malaysia are highest today. And if you were to take that as benchmark, it's incredible growth opportunity that we still have in China, in India, and in sub-Saharan Africa. Across various metrics, AOA is highly accretive, really accretive to the group. Now, last year, the exception was obviously organic growth, where we came in only 0.5%. But if you look at trading operating profit, zone AOA is a little over 300 basis points higher than the group. Free cash flow is about 20% versus the group 11.2%. Working capital is about 3.4%, and instead of the group's 4.7%. And ROIC, that's not goodwill burden, is 38%. It's a full 900 basis points above the group level. Now, this is the thing to remember is most of our growth are organic, came from having grown the businesses organically, with the exception, obviously, of the 2 JVs that we acquired right in 2011. So talking about organic growth, the top line has unfortunately been under pressure the last few years. You can see the slide here. Obviously, the slowing economies is a factor. Commodity deflation is also a reason. But look, we're not going to hide behind the external factors. Fact of the matter is the slowdown in the many markets have also exposed some of our own internal gaps. So it's not just an externally driven phenomenon. But very happy to report that we are getting growth momentum back, and still with some big construction sites that we need to fix. I will talk about China and India separately in a little bit, but let me just dwell on NPP AOA. You listen, and the 2 presentations from NPP EMENA and NPP LATAM, and you've heard the incredible growth story and so the progress made in those 2 businesses. There is no reason why we should believe that NPP AOA should not have the same kind of success story that we have enjoyed in other regions of the world. In fact, some of the challenges is NPP AOA today is very dependent on 2 big markets, which is Australia and Japan. So anytime one of them, this year it's Australia, sort of like fall out of bed, the whole NPP business sort of like is affected. We just announced, as a matter of fact, not too long ago, that we're doing a new setup where NPP AOA will leverage the scale and the know-how from NPP EMENA, much like NPP LATAM leveraged NPP US for the last 10 years and making significant progress. So we'll see. This is obviously to accelerate the business. So aside from growth momentum coming back from in the zone, also very happy to report that market shares are also recovering. And so you can see, we typically do not like to say excluding this, excluding that, but India last year was in fact quite an extraordinary event. So we pulling India out, the market share recovery is even higher. But needless to say, either way, you can see the improvement over time in the last 12 months. So to help our zone achieve full potential, we have a very specific roadmap. This is our internal roadmap. In fact, I'm sharing with you, this has not been sanitized for public consumption, so it's a bit dense. But let me take you through the building blocks. I mean, obviously, to drive the zone to achieve full potential, it's bookends between winning with the consumers and shoppers and Nestlé winning in society. But the first 2 blocks are the strategic priorities. And you can see the ones in blue is where we need to accelerate. So accelerating, very focused on accelerating sub-Saharan Africa, and clearly Nigeria plays a key role. And in terms of categories and products, it's Maggi and Milo. We need to accelerate in ASEAN, and it's not just coffee, it's Milo, it's RTD. Under red, the boxes in red is where we obviously need to fix. Oh, well, before I go to the fix, and you can see also Nescafé Dolce Gusto and Nestlé Purina Pet Care also in the blue box that we need to accelerate across all of our markets. But the fix, no surprise there, we need to fix China. We need to get it back to growth. And I'll be spending a lot more time on China in a little while. And fixing Yinlu is very, very important. India, no surprise to you, relaunching Maggi. But not just relaunching Maggi, but also building some other new pillars. We should not be happy, if you go back to the chart earlier, the pie chart, we should not be happy in a country like India that we're really relying only on one pillar like Maggi noodles. And also one of the fix was coffee in ASEAN. And then the green would be continue to innovate in markets like Japan. And so with that, the second block in our roadmap is what we call accelerators. And what are they? They are ways to help us accelerate demand generation. So the first block is consumer insights excellence. Being really, really good in consumer insights, understanding the rules of the category, understanding the consumers, the customers. Let us sell with facts amidst many rapidly changing consumer dynamics. This is the notion of expecting rigor to come back in everything that we do. The second block is what we call, internally we call it brand accelerator. It's the notion of perfect brand, perfect assortment, and perfect store. I'll be talking about that in a little while. And route to market, obviously, it's both expanding numeric distribution, but also sort of like keeping and maintaining this sort of like military-like execution when we go to the trade. And we had that in many of our markets, like the Philippines, so we need to make sure that we keep that up. The third big block is enablers, and what would help us enable us to grow faster and to be, and clearly one of them is innovation. The thing about innovation, and it's interesting, when I took over in early May, so a year ago, I had a market heads meeting in May, and I had two non-negotiables. So apart from the targets that the CEOs of the market have to deliver, there were two non-negotiables, and one is innovation, and it's the rollout of the innovation program that COSO in Japan had it for many years. And what it is, it's a competition. So anybody in the company can submit ideas, and then COSO and his team will then pick the sort of like the winner. And it's interesting, if you think about Chocolatori, which you will hear more from COSO, was the winner in 2014. Big Kit Kat was, I think, won in 2013, and the Cafe Within Shop also was one of the winners. So so a lot of our markets are doing that now. The idea is innovation doesn't have to come from the center. Oftentimes I hear market heads lamenting the fact that, well, we don't get this big innovation coming from the center, coming from the Vevey. It's like, wait. The beauty of how we're so decentralized is the fact that we are very close to our consumers and customers. So let's leverage that. And innovation does not have to come solely in the form of a product. It can be service wrapped around product, and you'll hear more about that from COSO. It can be business model innovation. And so it's, but the idea is, or innovation can just be, let's, shamelessly copy from other products or ideas from other markets and other zones. And last but not least, high-performing organization. I have people who know me know this is sort of like, bar none, my number one priority, no matter what role I take. It's amazing, 30-some years in business, the magic that happens when you have the right person in the right chair. I was in a top-to-top meeting with an ad agency, I think last week, and we were comparing notes with the chairman CEO, and I was telling him about, I firmly believe in picking the right people. And he said, he sort of like made this analogy. He said, it's like turning on the light switch. And it's really true, and you see it time and time again. It's not like some people are bad people. Sometimes when I talk about changing, usually the reaction I get is like, what do you mean? It's, so-and-so is so nice. And it's not that. It's just, if you think about the different circumstances that an executive or a leader has to perform, it's in a turnaround situation. It's all about dealing sometimes with incompetence. It's dealing with making tough changes. In a startup environment, it's about setting strong directions in the face of ambiguity. And so it's, this is the second, two non-negotiables with my market heads, and this is the second non-negotiable. I asked them to do what I call an N-1. When they sit down and review, do either the performance review with their subordinates or do a development program conversation under development plan. And it's interesting, at the beginning of the year when I did this, so I would sit in, and for instance, COSO's conversation with one of his direct report. And so the initial reaction from some some coffee BAMs, for instance, was like, why is Wan Ling sitting in my performance review? It's like, is this bad news? But consistently, unanimously, the feedback that came back was from the person doing the review, which is a market head. They said they took a lot more, they paid a lot more attention. It's human nature. Your boss is attending, observing, and judging how you conduct a people discussion. And so, and it's interesting because I did it through telepresence, and you can see the copious notes, on the other end from our market head. And in terms of the person being reviewed, they actually said, look, it's a bit intimidating, but in the end, they're really motivated. They find it very inspiring that, because so many of us talk about how talent is the #1 asset of the company, and yet we don't really spend and invest the time. So it's been an interesting process, and so that's my second non-negotiable with my market heads. And just an interesting side note, I had a market head who I found out later actually did a dry run of the performance review before I joined. Well, it's like whatever it takes. They have to do it. Because this is not something that's unique to Nestlé. We're all nice people. We don't want to tell somebody where they can improve. But talent development in a world like ours today, if you cannot, and many times people want to do better. People can do better. And so having the courage and really being thoughtful and spending the time to tell them where they can improve can go a long ways. So now with that, so now you've seen sort of like our building blocks to reignite growth in Zone AOA and to bring, to help Zone AOA achieve full potential. So now let me take you through. So the process today will be, I'll take you through 1, 2, and 3, just to give you some examples of how doing this have helped a lot of our markets. And then I'll come back and talk you through 5 markets. So with that, so the first block in the accelerator is this notion of being excellent in consumer insights.
What do you have here? This is mocha with cinnamon and marshmallow. Right.
Rasa macam first time rasa that coffee and the sweetness, but it's nice. My friend said it's very nice.
So it's the coffee mixes category in ASEAN have become, it has evolved into sort of like a repertoire category where people expect different variants, different flavors. And so this is a great example of a locally led innovation that's crowdsourced and co-created with our consumers. And it's amazing. Malaysia launched coconut flavor, caramel, and mocha. In the Philippines, it's cocoa mocha and cocoa berry. And in Thailand, it's creamy white with Nestlé milk. And it's interesting, it's All the products have had really good consumer acceptance. The new launches, for instance, in the Philippines alone, has already captured 2.4% market share. So these are not some Mickey Mouse sort of like efforts that we're doing, and so it's really exciting. And the other type of innovation is centrally led innovation. You might have heard this when Patrice talked. And the idea of blend and brew is that it delivers a cafe-style coffee with the taste and aroma of something the coffee that you would get in a cafe, but that you can enjoy within the comfort and convenience of your own home. And it's really amazing, you know, superior consumer preference test. You all know the 60-40 that we talk about. And in the Philippines, it has 65-35, and in Thailand, it has 80-20. Consumer preference versus competition. And so it's already out in the trade, very well accepted by the trade, very well accepted by consumers so far. So the next example of really leveraging consumer insights is our Milo Champions program. And you know, consumers, unlike all of us, are increasingly more health conscious. We like to track. I mean, I have a Fitbit. That reminds me every day that I'm not walking enough. But we like to track how we're doing. It's basically an exercise band for Milo. And you're going to hear more about this in this afternoon's digital section with Tom Baudet, and Michelle, I think, will present this. But it's cool for kids. It's great for mom because it's also a way for moms and kids to interact. It's been launched in Australia, early days, 20% awareness among Australian households. Usage rate was 77%, averaged 9 minutes spent on the app. So currently launching in Malaysia as we speak, and it should go to Indonesia in Q3. But again, it's based on consumer insights. The last example of consumer insights is KitKat. Well, it's actually not last, I have several more. It's you know, this notion about, again, you know, why should we be shy to copy from other markets? And you all, I think, I saw the boxes that you got yesterday. This was inspired by KitKat Chocolatori in Japan, and it was launched in Australia. But you take a 75-year-old brand, well, it's actually over 75 because we celebrate KitKat 75, I think, 2 years ago. So call it 77 years old, but it's a new way to engage with consumer. It's targeted for millennials, and it's a way to premiumize. I will roll the video and...
Hey guys, we're here at the Pitt Street Westfield Mall at the KitKat Studio. We've got people lined up around the corner, super excited to create their own delicious, unique KitKat. So the first journey that our customers can take is through our limited edition flavours. There are 4 each week and they're made fresh daily by our chocolatiers. The second journey we take our customers on is, of course, the Create Your Own KitKat. Customers can choose from 3 different chocolates, white, milk or dark, and 17 different toppings, and even personalise their packaging. And that's all sent through to our chocolatiers who create it all on site. Once your creation has been made by our chocolatiers, a text is sent out to let you know that your KitKat is now ready for collection at the front of our studio. We can take a photo of your finished creation and send that to you via text message. You can share that with your friends and family on social media using our hashtags KitKatStudio and Create Your Break.
I think it's a great idea. Like, it's really creative. It's going for 1 month only. Get down here and create your own bar. But apparently the caramelized Anna, which is my bar, is the best ever.
That is amazing. I'm so happy.
I think you guys should come to Adelaide.
So come and visit us for the ultimate KitKat experience.
It was amazing. I was in Sydney in August over a weekend after visiting with the business. And I went to the mall where the KitKat studio was in. And it was in the morning. The stores just barely opened. And there was a long queue. It's like wrapped around. There's that big mall. And I went into a shop and asking the shopkeeper, I said, what the heck's going on? I was just pretending like I didn't know anything. And the shopkeeper said, I don't know. These people started queuing way before the stores even open. And so it's just amazing, you know. It's oh, and then you know the Wear magazine. I don't know if it's, I know it's in the U.S. or the Wear magazine where you get it free in the hotel room, and I flipped open it, and it was the #1 suggested to do or to see was the Kit Kat studio in the mall, in the Wear magazine in Sydney. So it's amazing. Okay. Moving on to consumer insights excellence. This is, you know, an example of a flagship brand like Milo has always been part of our consumers' daily breakfast staple. And so we've now moved beyond breakfast and focusing on lunchbox consumption. And so this, you can see in Q1, 35% growth. And the best news is it had very minimal cannibalization in terms of our powder format, our powder Milo. And with this principle in mind, we're now doing the same thing for Bear Brand yogurt drink in ASEAN. We launched in the Philippines Q3 of this year. This is like amazing, right? When you talk about NHW plus PPP, magic happens. This is the first Nestum in Angola. It's the first recipe developed and produced in Angola, and this was inspired by Nestum in Portugal. And so this is 3-in-1 solution. You add water for a complete meal, a very robust consumer taste preference, dedicated route to market to reach the target. It's our targeted consumer would be, you know, the lower income consumers earning less than $2 a day. 46% growth in Angola and in Congo. And it's interesting, in Angola, we built a line thinking that the line would be sufficient to cover us for, you know, at even in the most aggressive estimates, like 18 months. And it's sort of like we ran out of capacity after 6 months. So, okay, so you know, the first block that we just went through was excellence in consumer insights. The second block of the accelerators, the 3 accelerators, is this notion of perfect brand, perfect assortment, perfect store. You know, internally we call it the brand accelerator. You are familiar with the Atlas tool. You know, we talk about focusing, this idea of really focusing where it matters. So taking category and geography, but obviously when it comes down to the market, you have to take it down one step further. You have to drill down below the category level. So within the category, what are the brand priorities? Is the assortment too big at the expense of what we call hero brands or hero SKUs? So we don't want people spending advertising or marketing dollars behind a whole bunch of brands to really make choices and really know what makes a difference. And so for those brands, once you decide, are you having the right advertising mix and spend? Is it consistent? Is it at scale? Is it having enough? Is it large enough to have lasting impressions? And then once we decide on the brands, we have to make sure that this clearly is reflected in the store with great execution. So let me show you an example. This is in Milo. And so our Indonesian team reviewed the role of each SKU for Milo and taking tough choices. And sometimes, you know, what happens in the markets, they're very hesitant because, oh my gosh, you know, I'm going to pull back on certain SKUs, I'm going to pull back on certain brands. They're nervous because with growth being so critically important for us as a group, but for us as a zone, nobody wants to do that. But it's, again, amazing when you have the discipline, you have the rigor in doing the analysis, good things happen. And in this case, they actually pull back on a number of SKUs. They upsize some SKUs, understanding each SKU against the consumer consumption habits, against sales velocity, retailer margin, and amazing things happen. 12% growth in Q1 of this year, 2016. Route to market, expansion of distribution. Clearly, there's always new sales opportunities as we expand distribution, but as we drive numeric distribution, we obviously have to be very focused on the quality of in-store execution, this rollout of Picture of Success. In Thailand, we closed a partnership with 7-Eleven, which is the biggest convenience store in Thailand with 10,000 stores. And it's amazing, we launched our Nestlé ice cream in Q4 of 15. It was a great launch for us, and it was actually also a great proposition for 7-Eleven because we lifted their overall category performance. In Indonesia, this is another example, over 3 million traditional outlets, and we're focusing also on alternative trade channels like coffee shops and smaller stores. Another example of expanding distribution, this is Mayobu. It stands for My Own Business. It's a successful program that started in West Africa and now roll out to the rest of the continent. And in fact, also rolling out in Asia. Bangladesh is now in the midst of doing that. But maybe to bring this to life, let me tell you a story about Ibrahim in Nairobi. He was in, just last year, an office cleaner, janitor. And he started doing this and at night. And the next thing you know, he built his business, bring basically Nescafe coffee to his neighborhood, got his wife involved. Today, he quit his job because he used to make $100 US a month. And now he has, I think, 30 people working for him who are making about $130 themselves each month, and he's making more than $900 a month now. So this is a great example of CSV efforts where it's really a win. We're helping consumers, providing them, opportunities to be entrepreneurs, to have a means to livelihood, and still be good for us because it's a very effective way for us to establish our brands in areas where traditional retailers just cannot get to. So with that, we covered the 3 accelerators. I gave you examples of what they have done and what they can do across the markets in our zone. And it's again, bringing rigor back in terms of consumer insights, brand accelerator, and expanding distribution. So now with that, I want to switch gear and be more market focused. We will pick a market in every block, in the 5 blocks. And obviously, India and China are 2 that I know you all are keenly interested in listening to. I will do India and China myself, and Kosa will do Japan, and for ASEAN, Ganasan will represent ASEAN in the form of Nestlé Vietnam, and Darnesh will obviously, our biggest market, our biggest business in sub-Saharan Africa being Nigeria. So with that, let me start with India. I cannot be more proud of the team in India. It's been an absolute privilege working with the team. Last year, I remember standing in front, when this whole crisis broke. And actually, it was the incident, I don't know if a lot of you know this, started in March of 2014. And it sort of like broke, the whole thing just, the crisis broke in May of 2015. It's almost like they were waiting for me to start. But it was incredible privilege working with the team because it was, there were many decisions we had to make that could have gone one way or the other. They just never gave up. So Maggie is progressing way ahead of expectations. You can see the brand trust at crisis was at 3. And today it's at 83. You see market share recovery at 53% today. So let me roll a video to tell you the story of how we got here.
What do you do when a food brand trusted by mothers for its children is subjected to doubt and suspicion? What do you do when the brand trust scores of a 30-year-old brand fall from 97% to 3%? The crisis on Maggie was unprecedented and sudden. It spiraled into nothing less than a national crisis in India, with the matter even reaching the Indian Parliament. We had to respond without losing any further time. Our ability to respond was made difficult by the fact that case was sub judice in court. Our first move. We strategically first targeted the die-hard believers. Social media tracking told us that young people were starting to miss their favorite Maggie. We decided to connect to them first. The only catch, we weren't allowed to sell the product. How would we advertise it? Our response was a series of digital films which did not show the product, did not mention the product, and yet communicated love, past the legal barriers. This was seen as a completely unexpected response from a brand in crisis. The digital campaign hit home with the youth, and for the first time since the crisis broke, the tide started to turn with loyalists sharing the videos and expressing their support for Maggie. Our next move was to try and create positive disposition for Nestlé India among opinion leaders. As the legal battle was being fought in the courts, we decided to remind India about the Nestlé's contribution to Indian lives for the last 100 years. A print and television campaign targeting the general public was launched to reminisce our emotional presence in India's social fabric for last 100 years. the media discourse started to become more empathetic to Nestlé. In October, the courts declared the ban illegal and lab tests proved that Maggi was safe. But much before we hit the shelves again, we had to face our most important and core consumer, the Indian mother. We told her that her decision to trust us was not wrong. She was right, we were right. A mass media campaign in multiple Indian languages that spoke to Indian mothers across the country that she was right in trusting Maggi and it was safe to give it to her kids. With the sentiment now turning in our favor, we had to prepare for our re-entry onto the shop shelves and in consumers' life. We launched a high decibel campaign with a happiness song that welcomed back Maggi in people's lives. The moms, the kids, the small restaurant owners to the hostel inmates.
छोटू लाइट जला दे प्लेट लगा दे ढाबे की रौनक लौट के आ गई दिल खुश खुश खुशाम दिल खुश खुश खुशाम फिर स्माइल को सलाम आ गई मैगी
No wonder it created such a massive anticipation that it took 6 minutes on an e-commerce site to sell out 60,000 welcome back packs of Maggi. We were back on shelves and people were loving it. As production and distribution ramped up, it was time to start focusing back what has made Maggi great. The same great taste and the priceless emotions. The re-entry into the marketplace and into our consumers' hearts has been heartening. Winning back consumers' trust takes time. But we've begun the journey well to win back love.
Great story on Nestle India. But the key now is not just focusing on getting noodles back, but also building other categories. And so the team with Suraj is moving fast in launching several products in India.